talks in English?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, actually, I want you to speak Japanese to the.
No, that's no problem. After what I did to you last night, I should probably do, hard labor for 2 weeks.
Maybe a bottle of
There was a moment last night where I looked and I thought, I hugged you and I thought, I only do. I mean, I don't even know why I bother, because when I try really hard not to get cerebrally mindful of what's going on, I say, slow down, Ron, slow down. He's not. He's human. He's not a robot. And then all the next thing you know is it's Kenny, which means Kenny never has ever hit me, yelled at me, kicked me, and I thought, so then my brain just kicks in. He can do it. He can take it. He can do this. Go ahead. Do whatever you got to do. Kenny will make it good.
And then he will be like this.
And then he did this. I was over there and I felt this, and I thought, I've crossed it. I've crossed it.
No, I didn't push it.
That's virtually
You
Kenny
pretty-
This-
kicking
hey,
you in
Ron.
the
Pretty much,
face.
that's
that.
basically what it
Yeah.
is. It was pretty much when he did that, I thought, Kenny did that? Oh my God, that's like a 300.
We should have it recorded.
Yeah.
We gotta play that. We gotta play that.
That was so funny though. But I just take advantage of it so much. All right, well, I love this topic. Let's talk about this a little bit.
All right, the question: why is piriformis yellow, and why is iliacus black in Myokin course?
When we color muscles.
Yeah. And I appreciate the question because it takes us back in history. We go back probably, I'm not kidding you, almost 3 decades ago, 30-some years ago. But I remember putting these muscles into categories back then with colors that I felt pretty strong about to help people appreciate how corollaries exist when you look at planar activity. As we talked about just a few minutes ago, orthopedics, when I grew up, and it's still the case today, you talk about kinetic and kinematic activity as it relates to planes, sagittal plane, frontal plane, transverse plane, etc. And I thought that was important, just to get people to appreciate the discussion about the plane of activity as it relates to those muscles that are responsible for that plane. And in this course, obviously we're talking about the proximal lower extremity, which is your hip, and the pelvis, which, by the way, back then, the pelvis course wasn't even put together. So I didn't have this color schematic mindfulness of an inlet and an outlet, or an adductor or an abductor, which if you take the pelvis course today, you'll find that red color reflecting the iliacus. And then depending upon the discussion, and Jan Platt and I have had many discussions about this, because this is probably one of the discussions of these questions we get on a continuum, a regular basis. Why is the iliacus black? And what does the anterior fibers of the iliacus and the posterior fibers of the iliacus represent? And wouldn't you see this if you did this, if you squatted, versus this when you stand? There are so many conjectures, there's so many possibilities that's the exact reason why it's colored black. You could even make an argument that this black color could represent what you were talking about earlier. There are some of us who we need to inhibit that iliacus. And obviously inhibition in this institute is really paramount when you start to think about what drives your need to inhibit something, and the word is usually position. So when you're out of position, in order for you to get that muscle to work correctly, you have to inhibit its bad working environment by first getting that muscle kinetic, muscle kinetics in a better position of orientation, so it can ideally work with other members of the table in the same color. This little guy doesn't have, he's a big guy actually, he doesn't have a lot of members of the table. He's sitting at a table by himself or herself, and that muscle's sitting there going, okay, my counterpart is really on the other side. I really don't want another red and yellow or green muscle. I want my counterpart. I want my other side to be working with me. So the muscle, the iliacus muscle on the right and the left side, and I think you guys are put in a position where you're talking about the iliacus on the left side, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the side that you see the most pathology of an anominate. And when that acetabulum starts to shift out, you start to see a big problem, because now the iliacus is in a better position to externally rotate that femur. It's in an easier state of mind to do some good external rotation of that femur. Keep in mind that in a good orientated position with that innominate, it's going to require the innominate to actually stay in an internally rotated state, so it can externally rotate the femur. Now that happens when you take and put your foot on the ground and you put force on the ground. That iliacus, when it contracts to help you stabilize over that leg, this femur that is holding you up at that point of contact, will externally rotate a little bit, as you all know, before it gets into the pronated state of mid-stance, which means this iliacus is firing. It's holding you up for the gluteal muscles on the other side of it to hold you up. So the iliacus is really kind of like an osseous muscle. It's really holding you stable, so all the outside of that innominate musculature can do its work, and whether it's posterior, anterior fiber, it doesn't matter at that point. It has to stabilize you so you can force yourself forward with mass that's being put on the floor for acceleration to occur from the friction produced by this proximal musculature. Okay, does that make sense? Now, on the other side, this iliacus is doing something completely different. It's still having the same impact on the innominate, but this leg's in free swing. It's an open environment, and this muscle depends on this muscle to keep these joints, the SI joint and the FA joint, doesn't cross the SI joint, but I'll get to that in a minute. Those muscles now, the iliacus on the front, and the muscles that keep these joints, the SI joint muscles together, are your sacral triosseous muscles, which I know you cover in that course: piriformis, obturator, glute max. Those three muscles become good triosseous muscles when these black muscles, black meaning they're not in a plane. It's not a muscle you can attach a plane to, because of the uniqueness of what they do. Their plane is shifting around by just the way you shift around. So as soon as you tell me it should be in that red category, because we're going to be talking about the pelvis and the inlet and the outlet, I would say to you, well, it's going to be a green muscle or possibly an orange muscle, this transverse plane, depending upon what you're doing at the time you're looking at that muscle. So I remember Cy, 25 years ago or so, and I remember talking to people about this, saying, what should we really do with this muscle and its uniqueness? I don't consider it really a plane muscle, and I don't consider it a triosseous muscle, but I do believe it's a muscle that really is necessary for us to keep our integrity under forces of compression. So I colored it black, because you don't want to assign it to a plane of muscles. So that's one of the only muscles I colored black, because of its uniqueness. And it is a unique muscle when you think about it. If you really look at it, it's really one of the largest muscles in our body in terms of surface attachment to a really small area and therefore these fibers, these proximal fibers, are stabilizing fibers. The distal fibers are more destabilizing fibers, because that's what you need. So while you're being destabilized at the FA joint, you're being stabilized at the AF joint by the same muscle. It's such a unique thing. So that's why it's black. It's basically a color that reflects I don't know where to put it. Did that
That's
help?
really true, yeah,
Yes,
because the shape of the
so-
muscle is like, it becomes so small.
Triangular.
Yeah, yeah, it's just,
Stabilizing here and then move over here.
Yep.
that's why I think coloring is so important, because you can see, but when you get the image of that color and you say to yourself, okay, regardless of what it does, look at the impact that it has on the surface that it's attached to.
Right. So
And
the area they have to color with black is
it's-
a lot.
It is a lot. It's really bigger than the Glue Max's area
Yep.
of attachment. So I hope that made sense. At the time, it made sense to me. Today, now that we have the pelvis course, maybe we'd make a section in here, and then we could say, in the pelvis course, it's colored these colors, but many of these people are not. These course attendees are not required to take,
Right,
the
right.
pelvis
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
So that's why it's black. You also gave me an opportunity to reflect on this thing called, corollaries. Corollaries are really big to me, as you both know. And when I look at this inside of our pelvic floor and the inside of our hip, between the two hips, I always think that there's two groups of muscles that keep us together. You could argue it's the adductors. You could argue that it's it's the glutes themselves. But I think the number one muscle that keeps the dynamic activity alive on both sides during typical forward locomotor movement is one of them is the iliacus, because of the stabilization it provides all of us in a unilateral single stance support state of activity. I think it's critical. It's just an opinion. It's like we talked about last evening. It's a perspective. Along with that leads me to this discussion about the yellow color. And the yellow color is an integrator color. It's a color that says there are multiple sites of impact that muscle has. Okay, so when you look at abdominals, the abdominals are opposing muscles. They're integrative muscles. They're not just rotary muscles. They're not just frontal plane muscles. They're not sagittal plane muscles, just like this black color. But the yellow color is a group of muscles, is a group of muscle fibers that is, when it contracts, it's like your diaphragm. When it contracts, everything's coming to a site of uniformity. It's all directing towards some area on itself, if you will. Okay, so when you look at the abdominal muscles, when they contract, multiple sites are being pulled together and compressed. There's the word again, compressed. So when you look at the three triosseous muscles of this region, the piriformis, the obturator,
And
the glue max, out of all three are doing that. They're taking the femur, and they're taking the sacrum, and they're taking the innominate and pulling them all together. And as we talked about, they're really, this will be hard, they're really sacral femur muscles, or they're femoral sacral muscles, or they're sacrum innominate muscles. There's like a sacroiliac. We'll just skip the iliac, call it innominate for now. Or they're the femoral innominate muscles, iliac. So you have this group of muscles that when they contract, everything is being pulled together. The muscle that has the broadest impact, again, proximal, like we talked about with the iliacus, is the piriformis. And the piriformis muscle, comes all this area, not here, but on that sacrum, there's fibers of that piriformis muscle. So this sacral activity, unlike the quadratus femoris, the obturator internus and externus, and I'm missing one, gemelles. The gemelles, those little guys, compared to the broadness of that piriformis muscle, it makes this more of a yellow color because it's pulling like all these ribs, all these ribs here, together, and it's maintaining that under compression. So you're getting this eccentric activity when you put your foot on the ground. It's got to give. To me, that's a yellow color. That's an integrated muscle. And if you take away that piriformis muscle, which is a good guy, I will tell you both, as you all know, when you hear a piriformis patient enter your clinic, all of you go, oh my gosh, sciatica, it's a bad deal. Why does that piriformis syndrome exist? Piriformis syndromes exist simply because it is put in a position where it cannot, a bad position where it cannot address eccentric compressive forces.
Just like abdominals.
Totally. That's why they're yellow. So they've got to be able to, these muscles have got to be able to take that hit from the floor as it's lengthening, and yet at the same time sustain the springing mobility, small little amount at the sacroiliac joint. Small. Some people argue that it won't move at all, but it does move. That is a scientific fact, and that movement will create pain if that piriformis does not have the ability to, again, like the abdominals, allow for rotation, allow for expansion and compression, and allow for this triosseous function, which is why out of the 3 triosseous muscles, we color this one yellow. Now I don't have my glasses on, but I want to make sure you guys help me with this. The gluteus maximus posterior fibers especially, what color what color? That's an external rotator, so that would be a color of, I believe is it green?
No.
I don't know.
Rotator
Which is orange.
is
Orange, okay, so see that's so it's an orange, and then you have another muscle, you have this obturator muscle, and what color do we color it?
Green.
That's green, and that's why that's where I should have said.
In the pelvis,
It depends.
green.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so anyway, you got,
Myokinius.
what's that?
In myokinius.
Malkin.
Yeah. So for those reasons, those 3 muscles are colored different because they are really in a plane of activity more so than the piriformis muscle, because the piriformis muscle, here we go, is like the black iliacus muscle because of its natural non-planar activity and non-family muscle. What would you put with it? Well, if you really want to know the truth, I love this, it's been a while since I reviewed it. I would put down the abdominals with it, specifically the left one, and the left transverse thoracic muscle, thoracic muscle. In the myokin program, Kenny and Cy, are you talking about, hopefully you're talking about the piriformis on the left side or right side?
Right.
When you color it.
Right piriformis.
And let's talk about, we'll end this little coffee break with this discussion. Why do you think it's, I know you know, but let's just remind everybody, why are we coloring the right side yellow and not the left one?
Well, my interpretation was that, of course, for right glute activity, we want more glute max,
Absolutely.
external rotation from there. But piriformis on the right side would have to communicate with all those muscles around the area and then say, well, if you're not quite doing your job, I might have to step up and then fulfill. So that's kind of integrated, right? Like they try to connect and they try to communicate, and whatever is not done, they try to step up and do it.
We need left abs and right piriformis muscles to offset a left AIC pattern. Now, that's why it's not a bad muscle. It becomes your new glute max and when you're in a left AIC pattern. To help the right glute max out, you have to engage left abs. To engage left abs, you have to have forces right here to assist this torso coming back on the left side. So this piriformis muscle will no longer be a syndrome muscle if it's co-working with the gluteus maximus posterior fibers along with the left abdominal IOs and TAs. And now you have the weakest area of ligamentous musculature corresponding with a pattern called left AIC deflected. In other words, we're preventing that pattern from occurring. We're holding you in a better position so those muscles won't be put in a state of strain. And when that muscle is no longer capable of working together with the left abs and the left transverse thoracis and the left abdominals, when that doesn't happen, the glute max no longer has the capability of doing its thing, external A on F, rotation, and now your new glute max becomes these little guys, piriformis being one of them.
They kind of lose the color of yellow.
And that was
Yeah, yeah,
perfect. And now you don't have a yellow piriformis muscle. What you've got is you've got a piriformis muscle that no longer is acting as it can't contract with that much force, and you can't put it anywhere on that list of colors, which is why I would struggle and say, which list does it belong in? Does it belong in frontal muscles, transverse muscles, external rotator muscles? You can't put it there because it's dependent upon the status of the yellow category, and that's why I believe it's a yellow muscle.
Right piriformis is interesting.
Well,
Can be yellow, right piriformis.
For sure.
Because
Yeah.
we want to use as a purple muscle in the pelvis.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the yellow
why,
muscle
why a purple muscle in the
to
pelvis?
IR the
Beautifully. Beautifully.
Yeah.
It's not-
Yeah.
But as we just said, he
in
can
American,
be
it's a little different.
the muscle that
If
we
you got
want
the left black iliacus going on, and if that guy got the ground, and then the right piriformis
Piriformis.
yellow working together, then this leg can let go of the floor.
Absolutely.
And then-
the
And then you
integrity,
can still
the
stay
integrity
stable.
of the forces that you need to then lift this leg up is preserved because this innominate is not forwardly tilted on the left and oriented to the right, which would lengthen that piriformis muscle off and then depower its ability at the time of heel strike to put you back in the position you want along with the glute max. And I guess the thing that I really feel strongly about is when you look at integration, the glute max is a triosseous muscle. It's not one of the best integrators we have. It's a great extensor, and we talked about it, and it's a lot, and it's really a better transverse external rotator because of the nature of the way your body is moving. It is caught up in the moment to externally rotate you when you're walking. When you're standing, however, you need the integrity between the two innominates from triosseous muscles to keep you together as you efface them eccentrically when you shift from side to side. Once again, we could sit here and talk about this life of ours is not pure. It's not pure purple.
Yeah.
It's not pure orange. And did I already talk about this? I don't really like to talk about planes, a muscle. Did we talk about this? Yeah, in this
Earlier,
talk?
yeah.
Just talk a little bit about it briefly, but I look at the planes, and I'm the one that put that together, and I did it only for us to start looking at the correlations, the references, the integration of muscles as a family. But when you really get down to biomechanics, most biomechanics are going to put a green color and a red color. I had to do that because I had to help people understand that perspective that I have is that there is a family of muscles in trouble, okay? And if that family of muscles in trouble, there's going to be other family muscles that are going to take some of those muscles and put them in their family to empower their activity. And it's kind of fun to play that game because now you can say, hey, when you have a piriformis problem or a sacroiliac problem, somebody's not at the right table, right? Someone doesn't belong here for Thanksgiving dinner, and so that's why I like doing what I did. And these two muscles that you picked, Sai, this black muscle is not a dark horse. It's not a bad guy. It's a muscle that we should be mindful that we all need. It's probably one of the most empowering muscles we have for our own body's ability to handle our mass. And the yellow muscles, all those yellow muscles, you can't say one's more important than the other. I hope today you realize by listening to this that when you lose your left abs, the probability of you losing your right glute max is pretty high.
Yeah.
And as soon as you lose your right glute max, you've got a new one there that's waiting for you to help out. and it's called that yellow piriformis
Yeah.
muscle
No,
on that
becoming
right
orange.
side. So, did that make sense?
Yeah.
And what's on the orange? What were you saying about the orange?
Well, the
right
yellow
max.
piriformis will have to become orange. to
Act
I
like
love
a
act
orange,
more
yeah.
like
That's
fluid max.
exactly where you would see that
You got it.
piriformis. It would move up to that. You just put a little
And
X
then you say,
across.
yeah, you don't really belong there.
Yeah. Yeah, you put a little X across that right glute max and insert
Yeah,
piriformis.
because it's the
So
best
it's the
alternative
best.
when you don't have glute max.
It's the best muscle to take over that glute max. Wasn't that fun?
Yeah, it's fun. And are we supposed to teach that in Biokin? All that? That's
No,
deep.
no, no. You don't
That's
have.
deep.
That is what you do in Myokin is you just make sure people understand. Now that you asked me, what was the intent of the color,
Yeah.
and that's really what you
Yeah.
wanted. But I
Yes.
went the long way around it. So is there history here? Yes.
Yes.
Is there reasoning here? Yes. Was there error on the safe side? Yes. Because if you start sticking those two muscles anywhere else, which you easily could,
Yeah.
because of poor position, you can make an argument, for that. But just the fact that you asked it, and for the people taking Myokin that are coloring it black, wondering where does it belong? I don't see it black anywhere. That's exactly why it's colored black. So
It's really helpful. Thank you.
I hope,
Thank you.
I hope so. I hope so.